In Lake Forest, the Chicago Bears moved through another pivotal week of preparation overshadowed by injuries, public scrutiny, and the swirling pressures that accompany a franchise attempting to transition from rebuilding project to legitimate competitor. And at the heart of this week's news cycle was the cautiously optimistic update on veteran linebacker TJ Edwards, who returned to practice in a limited capacity after missing 4 straight games while recovering from a fractured bone in his hand and a lingering hamstring issue, an absence that forced the coaching staff to rely heavily on depth players such as DeMarco Jackson and AJ Agbogbamiga, both of whom performed admirably but lacked the seasoned instincts and steadying leadership Edwards provides in the middle of the defense. The significance of Edwards' potential return cannot be overstated for a Bears team preparing to face a division rival that thrives on exploiting defensive misalignments, and with Chicago opting for a lighter practice schedule ahead of the Friday to Sunday turnaround, his presence, even limited, signaled progress at a moment when the defense could use both continuity and experience amid a stretch run where each snap carries playoff implication weight. Yet Edwards' situation was only one thread in a much larger tapestry of storylines, particularly as offensive coordinator Ben Jhonson found himself clarifying comments made a day earlier regarding rookie quarterback Caleb Williams' sub-60% completion rate, remarks that some observers interpreted as criticism aimed solely at the young passer, prompting Jhonson to emphasize that his earlier assessment of the passing game was never intended to place disproportionate responsibility on Williams, but rather to highlight the collective shortcomings across receivers, tight ends, and route execution. Explaining that route depth has been inconsistent, spacing has occasionally collapsed, and discipline on stems and breaks remains a work in progress for a young receiving corps still adjusting to the precision required in Jhonson's system. Jhonson stressed that Williams has shown week-to-week improvement in areas far more vital to sustained NFL success than the raw completion statistic: command of the huddle, pre-snap recognition, timing the protections, studying leverage, diagnosing rotations, managing the game without forcing ill-advised throws, and eliminating the habit he had last year of absorbing unnecessary sacks instead of throwing the ball away. A shift that naturally depresses completion percentage but preserves the structure of drives and prevents negative yardage plays that often spiral offenses into long-down situations. Williams' growth, Jhonson noted, becomes more evident when isolating moments on film where he reads the concept properly, anticipates the window, and makes the correct decision even when the result fails to land on the stat sheet due to receiver slips, such as Luther Burden stumbling mid-route, or timing disruptions, such as DJ Moore losing his footing on what was poised to become a significant pre-halftime gain. Moments that reinforce Jhonson's contention that the passing game's issues are multilateral rather than the product of a single player's deficiencies, underscoring the nuance required in evaluating a rookie quarterback, learning a scheme often described as one of the NFL's more detail-oriented systems. And with Williams' accuracy currently at 58.1%, Jhonson dismissed the notion that the idealized 70% benchmark was either realistic or necessary in assessing progress, especially for a quarterback simultaneously learning to operate under center, tightening footwork, and facing defenses eager to disguise pressures against him, while also taking on the responsibility of orchestrating pre-snap communication, an area in which Williams has made night and day improvements since the Week 1 loss to Minnesota, when the offense repeatedly struggled to get the correct formation and snapped plays late, stalling early momentum and contributing heavily to a defeat that still hangs over discussions about the team's developmental timeline. And as the Bears brace for one of the NFL's most emotionally charged rivalry games, Williams' incremental refinement becomes even more essential against a Packers defense that, under coordinator Jeff Hafley, has transformed into a disciplined, aggressive, and athletic unit ranking among the league's top 8 in points allowed, yards allowed, rushing defense, and pass defense, a group defined not by gaudy takeaway numbers — Green Bay forces far fewer turnovers than Chicago — but by an ability to generate consistent 3-and-outs, dictate game flow, and capitalize on opponents' procedural mistakes, all of which puts immense pressure on Jhonson to craft a game plan capable of withstanding the havoc created by superstar pass rusher Micah Parsons, whose freakish athleticism, honed technique, and relentless motor have produced at least 12 sacks in each of his first 5 seasons and currently sit at 12.5, with a nearly 20% pass rush win rate. a metric that places him among the league's elite and makes him the most disruptive defender the Bears have faced this year. Parsons' presence will inevitably influence Chicago's blocking schemes, as the Packers are expected to test rookie tackle A.Z. Trapillo early and often, forcing Chicago to decide how frequently to deploy additional chips, motion, stacked alignments, and condensed formations to protect Williams while still maintaining structural variety in the passing game, a delicate balance complicated by the threat posed by fellow edge rusher Rashan Gary, who demands attention in his own right and prevents Jhonson from simply sliding protection toward Parsons without consequence. And as these tactical matchups take shape, the Bears' front office continues to monitor the availability of veteran linebacker Kaiser White, recently waived by the Titans after logging only one appearance this season due to hamstring issues but reportedly healthy now, whose 137 tackles and productive 2023 season in Arizona make him an intriguing depth candidate, though early signs suggest Chicago is unlikely to pursue him unless he clears waivers, given Edwards' projected return, the anticipated reappearance of Noah Sewell and Ruben Hippolyte, neither of whom were placed on injured reserve, and the coaching staff's expressed satisfaction with the emergency contributions of Jackson and Agbogbamiga. Nevertheless, the mere consideration of White reflects the Bears' cautious approach to roster health as the season tightens, particularly with defensive leader Tremaine Edmunds still weeks away from rejoining the lineup from injured reserve, leaving Chicago to navigate a critical stretch in which continuity at linebacker could prove pivotal in containing opponents' run games and maintaining discipline in coverage against play-action designs, an area where young defenders often struggle, especially in cold weather games where footing becomes an additional variable. And as if the strategic and personnel-based subplots were not enough to energize the narrative surrounding the Bears-Packers showdown, the context of the rivalry itself, a cultural touchstone for Midwest football fans, steeped in decades of hostility and symbolic weight, only heightens the pressure on Williams, who enters Lambeau Field not merely as another quarterback suiting up in navy and orange, but as the player many hope will deliver long-term stability at a position where Chicago has endured decades of turbulence, making each development, each incremental improvement or setback, magnified through a lens that stretches far beyond the final score. And with odds makers positioning the Bears as 7-point underdogs despite their recent competitive surge, the game represents not just a test of talent, but a referendum on whether this team can seize the type of moments that signal a franchise turning a competitive corner, whether the coaching staff can win high-level schematic battles against a well-coached opponent, and whether Williams can generate the type of poise-driven performance that quiets skeptics, rejuvenates believers, and affirms the organization's long-term vision. And amid all these swirling dynamics, Edwards' hopeful return, Jhonson's support for his quarterback, the looming threat of Micah Parsons, the linebacker depth calculus, the evolution of Williams' command, the strategic chess match awaiting in Green Bay, the public doubts, the internal confidence. Chicago approaches the weekend aware that the game's outcome will ripple far beyond the standings, shaping perceptions, influencing narratives, and providing yet another data point in the ongoing effort to transform potential into identity, volatility into consistency, and possibility into tangible progress for a franchise searching with growing urgency for its next defining chapter.